I did not use the word vulnerability at all. I wasn't even thinking about it in these terms up until a year later. And looking back, I pretty much realized that this is what it was because we couldn't we didn't know the answers on lots of questions. All we could tell people, all we could tell our clients is what is it that we're going to do. And when people working with you understand this, they understand that you're doing the best you can and you've been open and transparent, that we're all together in this adventure. They pay back with loyalty and it becomes one big loyal team, both clients and employees. And I can't really separate these two groups because it's really, as I said earlier, both clients and employees are equally important. I don't know which one is more important for us.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? No leader would ever say that communication wasn't important to the growth of their company. But here it is, 2021, and are you putting forth as much effort as you need to be intentional about being a great communicator? And this is more than just sharing your vision, sharing the goals, but it's how you connect and relate to people. What we're going to talk about today is transparent communication. Leaders are required to have transparent communication because that is what's necessary to create loyalty and create the kind of connection between employees. We want our employees to think for themselves. We want them to make decisions. We want them to trust themselves. And that's the way we scale companies, is through people. But leadership has to be transparent in their communication, and they have to be great communicators, and you have to work on it. I believe you've got to be really intentional about this. So today's conversation is with the co-founder of Coherent Solutions, a 9-time Inc. company, and we're talking with Igor Epshteyn. And Igor talks about communication. Now, he will admit that communication is not his natural ability, but he knows how important it is. And transparent communication is a part of communication that allows you to truly open up, be vulnerable, and really share with your employees where necessary. Today, we talk about transparent communication. What's in it for you is that you can learn some of the key elements of why you should communicate with your employees, why you should create this space to be transparent and create loyalty, and how that all works together. If you have any questions about what your path is on your journey to being a great, extraordinary leader, you might want to check out Fast Growth Boardroom. Because if you want to be a great leader, then you want to hang out with other great leaders. You want to learn from them. You want to be coached and be challenged and supported. And that's what we do inside Fast Growth Boardroom. If you want to see what that's all about, just go to fastgrowthboardroom.com. If you think you're a great fit, then I encourage you to apply. We'll get on the phone, we'll talk, I'll answer all your questions, and I'll make sure you are a great fit because we are only as good as the type of people that we bring on board. We really believe that we're here to serve people that want to be extraordinary leaders and keep growing their companies, increase the value of their companies. So check out Fast Growth Boardroom if you think it's a fit for you. Now here's our interview with Igor. Igor, how are you?
Great. And yourself, Jim?
I am fantastic. Excited to have you on the podcast. We've got a great conversation planned. Tell us a little bit about Coherent Solutions.
So first of all, thank you for having me in. I appreciate it. And so Coherent Solutions is the software product development and technology consulting company. I started this organization in late 90s, and we've gone through a number of different ups and downs, and we've been on a consistent growth stretch over the last 10, 11 years.
Love that. We focus on a lot of growth-oriented companies here. You've been on the Inc. 5000. Was that a goal that you set out early in the career, or is it just something that happened?
I think it's just completely something to happen. So if we started applying, I believe, I could be wrong, but I think like 7 years ago, and I think we've been consistently selected as one of the nominees on the list. So, but it wasn't necessarily a particular goal. It was just a byproduct of growth and expansion. So, but I think it's been a great tool for us to connect with the community and get some recognition, and also see how companies of similar size are doing.
Well, that's a good explanation for what happens when you are a part of this community. And I really appreciate you being here because we're building a community of fast growth leaders, learning from each other. The podcast is a great format to do that. So we're going to dive into this. You had told me earlier you have about 1,600 employees. To get to where you are now, if you couldn't scale through the people that you have around you, Kind of curious, how important are the people to the overall growth of the company?
Well, that's a good question. So, people is the growth of the company. So we never look at the clients as one target market for us. So we kind of have to serve two target markets. Our services are purely based on people, their skills, education, and everything else. So people is the fuel. People is the engine that allows the company grow. So we spend equal amount of time focusing on targeting our people and employees as we do with our clients. So it's a absolutely fundamental key component of the organization and enables us to grow, enables us to get to new horizons.
As you've gone through many different phases of growth, you're a different company than you were, in the beginning 90s, starting this out. Communication has changed over time. You shared with our team about how important communication is to the overall leadership and culture of the company. Give us an idea of why it's so important.
It's absolutely crucial, in my opinion, especially in the context of 2021, when the whole world kind of faced this kind of unprecedented, unexpected changes, when everyone moved from a team environment, working together, into their own spots and working remotely. How do we keep ourselves as a company, as one living organism? How do we maintain the essence of who we are when all of a sudden, within a very short period of time, we had this team building exercises, we spent time together, we have multiple offices around the world, but despite of that, we still had events and we collaborated, we traveled nonstop, we were seeing each other. And now all of a sudden we all work in different places without seeing each other for essentially a whole year. So how do we maintain ourselves? That's where the communication comes into play, because without it, how can you grow? How can you keep people together?
Igor, give us an idea of some of the specific things that are different in today's communication rhythms than it was before the pandemic.
Well, very specifically, it's just the frequency and the cadence of how we communicate, and also what we're saying. As a leader, you always want to know the answers and all the questions. You always want to in a position to be able to tell people and your clients and your employees that, well, this is what's going to happen, this is where we're going. Unfortunately, the whole world faced kind of unknown situation when we didn't know what was going to happen the next day. So being able to make yourself vulnerable and still maintain honesty and transparency, that's kind of the main difference, in my opinion, that happened in our company. So you can't lie to people. You can't make things up. You need to be honest, and you need to continuously drive them towards the goals that you have, which was at some period of time was simply trying to understand what was happening and where the future was going to be. So this kind of combination of vulnerability, if you will, was something else that I really didn't experience before that much. That was the new element that we had early 2021. In 2020, I should say.
Now, hold on for a second. Igor just said leaders really want to know the answers to everything. But the reality is there's a lot of unknowns, especially in this last year. But moving forward, there's even some unknowns about how we will work together in hybrid organizations, who will work from home, who won't, and how we will evolve together as a company. And you want to make sure that you have the ability to be transparent with your employees. You want to make sure you have the consistency and the right cadence of communication across all of these big changes. It really is important for you to understand how important this is. It's okay for you not to have all the answers. I know you want them, but it's okay to say, I don't know. But what you have to follow that up with is, let's figure this out together. I'm here to guide you and support you. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but that's the tone at which I believe leaders are able to navigate through the uncertainty in front of us. And it doesn't matter if your company's growing really fast. It doesn't matter if your company's seeing some hard times. It's always important to have these kind of communications. Back to Igor. I've been having a lot of conversations about vulnerability with my own clients. As an executive coach, it's not something that they've actually been prepared to deal with. Specifically, I asked one client, what does he see as the necessary steps forward for his team? And he's like, we need people to really share what they're thinking, what they're feeling in their heart. And we talked about him leading by example and being vulnerable. When you had to understand that vulnerability was so important this last year, what would we have seen inside of your communication with your team?
I did not use the word vulnerability at all. I wasn't even thinking about it in these terms up until a year later. And looking back, I pretty much realized that this is what it was, because we couldn't we didn't know the answers on lots of questions. All we could tell people, all we could tell our clients is what is it that we're going to do. And when people working with you understand this, they understand that you're doing the best you can and you've been open and transparent, that we're all together in this adventure. They pay back with loyalty, and it becomes one big loyal team, both clients and employees. And I can't really separate these two groups, because it's really, as I said earlier, both clients and employees are equally important. I don't know which one is more important for us. So that's kind of the assessment, and that's the word vulnerability came into my mind, because that's what it was.
I appreciate you being honest with us and sharing that you had to look back to see that, because sometimes that is the mode at which we can understand what we just went through. You said something in there that I'm having in a lot of these conversations too, is how do we create more loyalty? They want to create more of a place of that people want to work there. They have a sense of ownership, but loyalty and transparency, I think, go hand in hand. Have you seen that across your company?
Absolutely. And I strongly believe that loyalty is not something that goes one way. It's something that you have to be loyal to your people, and you have to make sure that you build the right team to begin with, which we spend a lot of time assessing, interviewing everyone based on specific core values that we have in the company. And based on that, as you stay loyal to people, you get loyalty back. That's pretty much the kind of elements and the mode of operation that we have.
We've done a ton of interviews around core values. I find fast growth companies have really put a lot of focus on being intentional about these values, hiring the right people in the values. Did you learn that somewhere, or did you just find that over the course of hiring thousands of people?
It's a combination. So we never came up with core values out of thin air. We use the system for our business management called EOS. It stands for Entrepreneur Operating System. And one of the key components of the system is really that you select the core group of people who you think belong to your organization, and you try to assess what these people have in common. And based on that, you come up with a set of core values. So we've done it probably, if I'm not mistaken, like 10 years ago. And they really haven't changed much. We maybe tweaked a little bit the verbiage or some other elements, but in general, we haven't really changed the values at all. So it's really the system, this approach made us think about core values in the beginning, but then this is who we are. This is how we operate.
I really appreciate you sharing that with me, because I think a lot of people misunderstand core values as something you do once and then you kind of put it aside and get the work done. Getting the work done is absolutely important, but how you get the work done really is those core values. Are you using conversations through one-on-one conversations and meetings to reinforce the core values?
Yeah. So it's not a transaction. It's not a process. We say, oh, now we're using it. Now it's great. So it's a continuous process. We were learning how to use these tools and these approaches throughout the year. So you use these values as we hire people, as we promote people, as we talk to people, and if we see that someone doesn't necessarily fit the mold, we're trying to assess the person based on the values. Frankly, we use the same approach or similar approach with our clients as well. So in other words, maybe it's not exactly the same set of values, not exactly the same set of key criteria, but it's something where you have to be aligned with your clients if you want to have relationships with an organization that's not transactional, it's not like shortened time span. You have to have it and approach it from the same position.
Hold on for a second. Igor just talked about the importance of interviewing people based on core values. What that is you being intentional about the core values of the company and creating a library of questions for you and for others that are interviewing your employees so that they understand that we're trying to hire people that have common values. I don't care what your values are, but if you have these questions made available, then you're not just winging it inside the interview process. You're actually being intentional, and it'll support your people to bring on the right people. Back to the interview with Igor. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. The real thing that we came here to talk about was communication. A lot of leaders that are like you think they're a pretty good communicator, Was there a time when your communication actually you had to get more self-aware or more, intentional about how you're communicating with your team?
Yes, definitely. I'll be open and with you. I don't consider myself to be very good communicator. So it's something that it's easier sometimes to send an email, or it's easier sometimes to be in a room by yourself and kind of think your thoughts and then tell a small group of people what you're thinking about and what the decision is. But more and more, I've been kind of pushed by my team to talk more, to communicate more, and whether it's in front of people or in front of microphone and the camera. But yes, I mean that's been an evolution and growth for me as well, and it's not something that I have naturally in me. It's not the gift that I have. Like I'm not very good in public speaking and so on and so forth. So, but that's something that you absolutely must be able to do, because people, when they see that you sincere, open, and honest, they forget little details. They don't really pay attention
Yeah.
on the nuances of what you said.
I think another area where people really struggle, and I say people meaning leaders like yourself, is the listening behind it. They think that they know the answer. Have you had to work on your own listening skills in this journey?
For sure. I mean, it's super important. I guess listening comes to me a little bit more naturally. I like to get opinions from people. I don't. Whole process of growing is the ability to surround yourself with people who are much smarter than you are, and you have to listen. You have to understand. Most of the decisions we make in a company, they're not easily kind of wake up one day and go make this decision. We try to move fast, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we listen to people, we listen to the key players in different areas. And I think it's completely important not to make these decisions in isolation in the vacuum. So you have to get the feedback from people and include them in the decision making process.
We've been talking about the importance of communication as a leader, and I want to just give you a chance, if you've made any mistakes as it relates to this, that we could all learn from, that you feel comfortable sharing with us today. What comes to mind?
Well, it's an interesting question. Again, as I said, it's not something communication and public speaking, and it's not something that comes to me naturally. So maybe the need to communicate with people early on, even if your company is 20 people or 50 people, you need to start early, and people need to understand what's the agenda. People need to understand what the goal, what the vision. And to me, if people feel that you on the same adventure ride, everything feels a lot more comfortable for the whole team. So again, last year pandemic pushed us into this situation when we had to jump on the wagon and we had to start talking a lot more. I guess maybe one of the adjustments that I should have made in retrospect is to talk to people a little bit more frequently before the pandemic happened.
Well, Igor, I appreciate you sharing this with us. These mistakes happen all the time, and it's good to know that you're aware that that's an issue. I think a lot of leaders aren't aware that communication is an issue for them. When I do 360-degree feedback and I figure out how these direct reports are experiencing their leadership from founders, the number one thing that comes back is always communication. So that's the reason why we're here talking with you today about how do we really create a place where people feel this sense of loyalty through communication. I really appreciate you being here on the show.
Well, I appreciate you having me here, as I said. And it's also from the communication standpoint, when we talk about kind of top-down communication, talking about the vision and everything else, as I said, it's super important. But there are also other aspects when people have making decisions in certain areas. How do you communicate these decisions, that especially if they affect other parts of the organization? So yeah, I mean, I can't overemphasize, as the organization grows, the number of people increases, the complexity of communications is growing exponentially as well.
That's a great point. Thanks for being here on the show.
Thank you very much, Jim.
I know Igor's still listening in here, but I wanted to recap what we just experienced through this interview. When you are a leader and you are communicating at some level, it changes over time. He has changed and evolved as a leader through all of the hiring inflection points that this company has been able to do. The growth that it's done over the last 10 years really has been attributed to the way he communicates, the way he builds loyalty, and the way he creates a place for this core values of the company to shine through. So if you're worried about or concerned about what your next step is as a leader, maybe you have the EOS system and you want to figure out some of the gaps that are going on inside that system. This is something we work with all the time. About about 50% of the clients we have are using EOS, and they have some kind of gap as it relates to leadership. It's not just about the tactical elements of running a business. So if you're wondering what those gaps are, make sure you reach out to me. We've got a community of fast growth leaders at Fast Growth Boardroom. If you think that's a fit, we'd love to have you apply there. And if you have any questions about what your next steps are, just reach out to me at genehammett.com. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.